Coming up today, opposition boycott over. The rival parties resume their review of next year's budget proposal at the National Assembly. The OECD slashes South Korea's economic growth outlook for this year to 2.7%, citing weak consumer spending and sluggish exports. Plus, as results pour in, Aung San Suu Kyi's pro-democracy party is heading for a landslide victory in Myanmar's historic election. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, November 10th, here in Seoul. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this morning. Lawmakers at Korea's National Assembly got back to work on Monday following a 4-day boycott by the main opposition party over the government's recent decision to reintroduce state-authored history textbooks into the nation's schools. Our Park Ji-won starts us off.
Several of the National Assembly's standing committees, as well as a special budget committee, have resumed deliberations on pending bills and budget items this Monday. The Budget Committee in particular has a very busy schedule ahead, as it is facing an early December deadline to complete work on the government's budget for next year. The committee met just twice last week, and without the main opposition NPAD since the Liberal Party boycotted them in protest over the government's move to reintroduce a state-issued history textbook for secondary schools. But they have returned to Parliament to fully assume their responsibilities and take up pressing legislation. The ruling Saenuri Party welcomed the move to normalize Parliament.
We're facing a pile-up of current issues, including next year's budget and the passage of several economy and reform-related bills. We need to end wasteful debates on history education and focus on bipartisan cooperation to push policies.
The main opposition NPAD remains adamantly against the government's decision to bring back state-issued history textbooks, but now is taking a two-track approach. While the Liberal Party will cooperate on legislative duties, it plans to continue protesting the issue. And their concern and criticism continued on Monday.
The current administration is trying to enforce conformist history education on our children, but it is going to destroy students' creativity.
Meanwhile, leaders of the main rival parties, together with National Assembly Speaker Chung Eui-hwa, agreed to honor the deadline that was set for redrawing electoral districts ahead of next year's general elections, which ends this Friday. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, the OECD has cut Korea's growth outlook for this year to 2.7%. That's down 0.3 percentage points from its previous forecast that it made in June. The Paris-based group cited sluggish spending due to the MERS outbreak earlier this year and slumping exports for the downgrade. But the organisation expects the Korean economy to gain momentum next year and grow 3.1%. It said free trade deals with countries like Australia and Canada will boost the country's exports. As for the global economy, the OECD cut its growth outlook to 2.9% for this year and 3.3% for 2016. Myanmar's opposition party is celebrating an early victory as it is on course to score a landslide victory in the country's first free national election in 25 years, although the National League for Democracy, led by Aung San Suu Kyi, is waiting for the official results. Early counting is well in its favour, winning 49 of the 54 lower house seats thus far. The party said it has also won all 12 of the upper house seats from the party's stronghold of Yangon, which is Myanmar's biggest city. The ruling military-backed Union Solidarity and Development Party has conceded defeat and said the party would accept the result. An official result of the nation's 498 seats is expected to be released in mid-November. Staying with international news, and Britain is reported to have passed on to Russia certain information on last month's plane crash over Egypt's Sinai Peninsula that pointed to it being a terrorist attack. According to Moscow-based news agency Sputnik, the British Foreign Office recently gave Russia its conclusion based on intelligence that there was a high probability the plane was brought down by a bomb. A spokesman for President Putin confirmed later that Russia received certain intel from London without giving further details. He said Moscow was counting on mutual cooperation with all countries that can help. The crash killed all 224 people on board. Now, the world's climate is about to enter uncharted territory. This is according to Britain's Met Office, which says man-made emissions have pushed global warming to 1 degree Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The unwanted climate milestone is one of 3 set to be smashed this year. 2015 is also set to be the hottest on record. Officials at the Met Office say temperatures are so far beating past records by a country mile, was how they put it. Now, topping off the grim news, the World Meteorological Administration said Monday that 2016 would be the first year in which the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was over 400 parts per million on average. The agency attributes the rising CO2 levels to the continued burning of fossil fuels. Now, the latest announcements come just 3 weeks ahead of a UN summit in Paris where world leaders will attempt to reach a new deal on slashing global emissions. The leaders of Korea and Iceland have signed an agreement to shore up their cooperation on projects related to the Arctic. Now, one of the main plans is to shorten travel routes for ships going between Europe and Asia. Kwon So-ah has this report.
South Korea and Iceland are separated by around 8,300 kilometers of land and sea. And for the first time, an Icelandic president has traveled the distance since diplomatic ties were established more than 5 decades ago. On Monday, President Park Geun-hye and President Olafur Ragnar Grimsson held summit talks at the presidential office of Cheongwade. There, the two laid out the groundwork for shortening the distance of a trade route between Europe and Asia that will save both sides time and money. They discussed a North Pole route that would reduce shipping time between Korea's southern port city of Busan to the Netherlands' southern city of Rotterdam by over 30%. Compared to the conventional route through the Indian Ocean and Suez Canal, it would be a drop from 40 to 30 days. This would provide Korea and Iceland a good opportunity to boost trade. Last year, Korea's exports to the Nordic country were worth just $3.1 million, mainly in cars and tires, while it imported $2.6 million worth of products like fish and fur. Park and Grimsson also discussed energy matters. While Iceland is #1 in producing renewable energy among the 34 OECD nations, Korea is at the bottom with room to grow. Korea's interest in the Arctic region, known to be rich in natural reserves, and will to deepen its partnership with Iceland has only gotten bigger since it became a permanent observer of the high-level Intergovernmental Arctic Council that deals with issues in the polar region. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, North Korea has been mourning the death of one of its high-ranking marshals. However, it is the whereabouts of another, even more high-profile official that is of greater concern to the majority of North Korea watchers. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
North Korea's leader Kim Jongun has expressed condolences on the death of Lee Sol, who died from lung cancer over the weekend. Lee was Marshal of the Korean People's Army. According to the Korean Central News Agency on Monday, the communist leader visited the mortuary where Lee's body was held on Sunday. A state funeral is planned for Wednesday. Lee held numerous key posts in the KPA and was appointed Marshal of the North's military in 1995. Pyongyang has released the composition of the official 170-strong funeral committee, but the list doesn't include Choi Ryong-hae, the secretary of the Workers' Party of Korea, raising speculation about his fate. South Korea's Unification Ministry said on Monday it will analyze the list to see if there are any changes to the communist regime's power hierarchy, and added it is unusual for Che not to be listed. Chung Seung-chang, a senior researcher at the Sejong Institute, says Che may have been ousted from the party. Chung says there are also other changes in the North's hierarchy and points to the director of the Korean People's Army, Hwang Byung-seo, who seems to have moved up one rung on the ladder to become third highest in the communist regime's hierarchy. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, the Minnesota Twins have announced they won the almost $13 million bid for Korean slugger Park Byung-ho. They will have until December 8th to negotiate with the 29-year-old Nexen Heroes player. The Twins' bid posting was accepted, but it does not guarantee a deal. If a deal is not reached, Minnesota will get their cash back and Park will return to Nexen. Park has played in Korea's professional baseball league, the KBO, for 9 years now. He pulled off 53 home runs last year. That's a career high and a KBO record. Now, South Korea is a wonderful country to visit for a vacation, and the world seems to be recognizing that now, with more and more tourists coming to see the sights, imbibe the culture and try the food. And with this in mind, and to raise even more awareness about the country, the Korea Tourism Organization is holding its Global Tourism Leaders Forum right here in Seoul. Lee Ji-won reports.
Jeju-do Island, Hanok Village, Myeongdong are famous tourist spots in Korea, but a country cannot simply attract tourists with its sceneries. It needs to follow the trend and taste of the changing tourists of today. This is one of the messages highlighted by Kim Sang-tae, director of the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute, during the 2015 Global Tourism Leaders Forum held in Seoul on Monday. Kim's presentation addressed the trends of cultural tourism and tourism policies in Korea. According to the Korea expert, if the late 1990s were about mass tourism focused on nature and package tours, the 2010s has called for more of a creative approach. This could be touching on the experiences of the Korean people's culture and daily lives. Kim cited temple stay as one of the successful products reflecting today's trends.
Among Korea's official development assistance, tourism is an important sector. By inviting the recipient countries, Korea would like to share the know-hows for a successful tourism industry.
The forum invited leaders of Korea's tourism industry to share their success stories with other countries. Participants invited from 15 countries took note of new suggestions and also presented their own country reports.
In Colombia, we have many challenges, and we learned that here in the forum. For example, we have to improve our converge between culture, tourism, and IT technologies. And we have to improve as well the investment in tourism, in cultural tourism in Colombia.
After the forum, participants will be offered various training programs to gain hands-on experience in tourism policies and hotel service, helping them gain more insights on Korea's tourism industry. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, a Seoul-based international women's group hosted its annual fundraiser on Monday. Visitors there to support the charity event also had the chance to enjoy some pretty exotic goods and foods. Lee Soo-eun takes us there.
A ribbon-cutting ceremony opened the 53rd annual Seoul International Women's Association Bazaar in downtown Seoul today. Joined by several political and economic figures, the event was then handed over to charity groups and vendors from around the world to begin their sales.
This vase from Iran, painted in vivid blue, and these fancy leather boots from Portugal are just some of the things that you can find at today's bazaar. What's even better is that the profits go to support a good cause.
We shop, we eat, we spend money here, and everything gets donated to charity. Not just in Seoul, but around the Korean Peninsula. We give money to over 30 charities every year.
Embassies and cultural groups representing some 39 countries gathered under the theme Share Culture, Share Love, Share Life to join the initiative.
What brings us out to the Siwa Bazaar is the spirit of giving, actually, to give back to the people we live with in the community who are in need, hopefully women and children who are in need.
Siwa is a Seoul-based women's group with over 400 members from 40 nations, and it's been around the city engaging in charitable activities for more than 50 years.
So we bring women from so many different parts of the world together to create friendship. And while we're also engaging in cultural exchange, that also enriches our lives. And we also work on charity to help the less fortunate in Korea.
With around 4,000 to 5,000 people attending this year's event, Siwa's Bazaar, just like its slogan, shared culture, love, and life with the community. Lee Soo-eun, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Thank you as always for tuning in to our newscasts, and we'll be back throughout the day with more of those newscasts. Goodbye.